On the financial fellowship.
Nice.
We literally,
I could be that person.
Me too.
Okay, welcome into the Entrepreneur Fellowship podcast. Today we have Kyle and Jake, the founders of the Entrepreneur Fellowship. Hey guys, thanks for coming in again.
Glad to be back.
Of course.
I'm here too, Isaac.
Oh, and Isaac, yeah, we got Isaac as well.
Okay, like come on.
So if you haven't checked out the Facebook page yet, go check it out. It shares the same name, Entrepreneur Fellowship. I keep wanting to say Entrepreneur Podcast. So the whole arc of this group is to really help out our tribe to not only get by, but thrive through the vehicle of acquisitions. We want to help you engineer wealth and build your future with no boundaries. Some of you may already know the ins and outs of business and acquisitions, but might be foggy on some of the details. Some of you may have never even conceptualized the idea of buying someone else's business in lieu of starting one and have no idea where to start. Well, you're in the right place. Throughout the year, we'll have educational podcasts on different aspects of acquiring businesses that have already left the proverbial runway. These short and informationally dense podcasts will help to answer some of these questions. Sorry, you might have. So we're going to start with the basics today, fellas. What do you think? What do you think?
Let's do it.
Okay, so I thought that it'd be a good place to start with some stats. I actually got this from the Buy Them Build book. So stats from the Buy Them Build book, startup launches with approximately 65K invested have a less than 10% chance of success. A venture-backed firm that accepts an average of 41 million per startup only has about a 25% success rate. 80% of small businesses that transact are under the $1 million mark. And according to the Small Business Administration, the SBA, the amount of small business loans that go delinquent are running about 2%. This means the potential $1 million at risk has a 98% chance of success.
Boom.
Boom. So one of the main questions I'm getting from people when I'm talking about this is, what is the risk? That seems pretty good. So maybe we can dig into that a little bit.
Yeah. So the risk, there's always risk associated with buying assets, right? So I don't want to sit and mislead anybody and say, hey, there is no risk whatsoever, because I don't feel like I'd be doing anybody a service. But the risk compared to building a business from scratch, starting from scratch, the risk compared to even buying some forms of real estate, the risk is pretty low if you buy correctly. And I think it all comes down to the business you buy is going to determine the risk. So for us, some of the things that we look for are businesses that have been in business for at least 5 years, ideally 10 years or more, because that just gives you a proven track record for product market fit, right? They have good reviews. They have a good overall reputation in the community. And if you're buying something that's already established and you go through proper due diligence, I think the risk is pretty low. What do you think?
Yeah, it's definitely a game of risk mitigation, but whether it's real estate or businesses, on any acquisition that we're making, it's looking at the risk profile, right? So to really oversimplify our business buying process, two quick things we're looking at is value. Is there an easy value add? Is the company just lacking technology and we need to bring it to the 21st century? Can you not find them on Google? Would throwing gasoline on the sales efforts greatly increase it? After the value add would be.
I think that probably the most, sorry to cut you off, I think the most important part to mitigate the risk is the financing structure, how you structure the financing, the seller financing, or the SBA loan. But more often than not, we're looking for opportunities where we can leverage seller financing. So if your debt service payment to the seller is, so low compared to the income that's coming in, we want to be able to walk into a business and know that if it drops by 50%, we're still going to be able to cover the debt and be profitable.
Wow.
Yep.
Those are massive.
Yep. I would say to finish my risk calculator here would be the risk could, when we're looking at risk, is there heavy concentration? If they lost one customer, could 30% of revenue disappear the next day? If there's a recurring model to it, like the cleaning business, all these customers are every 2 weeks, every month, like the likelihood of us losing more than 10% of business when we purchase that is very low. And then to Jake's point, how you structure the deal is really going to be how big that spread is. And, you know, if the business brings in $10K a month and our debt service is only $2,500 a month, we could go down 75% and still be able to cover the debt service. So structuring a deal with a low debt service is really going to be the main way which you can deleverage the risk.
Got it.
And I mean, just like from the stats, right? It's saying 98% are successful. So obviously you don't want to, like you said, no, I don't want to do a disservice to people who are listening. But generally speaking, a lot of those things are already in place to where they are already profitable. They are already succeeding. So you're really just coming in and looking for high level stuff you can do to grow the business.
Yep.
So you're not buying anything that's dying, essentially.
And you should be able to identify that before you purchase the business, right? You should know right away in the first 30, 60, 90 days, this is what the plan is. And when you already have a business in place, we're just working on the high level, big needle movers. Versus starting a company, you are unfortunately spending so much time just building out that infrastructure and still proving proof of concept at that point.
Yeah, creating a website, getting business cards, telling everybody.
Yeah. Well, I just finished.
Your first 1 or 2 or 3
Yeah,
people.
the hiring is a full-time job.
I just finished listening to the first podcast, and I think it was Jake who had the analogy of the airplane. You know, getting up in the air is the hardest part, and once you're there, it's much more on cruise control, and you just have to keep your systems working at that point. And I think that's a great analogy. And I feel like that's the case with so much. You know, the hardest part of getting in shape is the first month, right? And then you're just on cruise control. You've got good systems, you've got good dietary habits, good workout habits, and it's just much simpler. So that's kind of the model that you're buying. You're buying someone that's you're buying a business that's already in good shape, or at least, you know, they've got good pieces, and you're just filling in the holes and making it a little bit better.
Yep, exactly. And I think to kind of put a bow on this would be looking at the seller's morals and values and personality and characteristics, and getting to know them on a really personal level. Because if you're doing business with a good person, that there's a level of risk that's lowered because of that. And we've bought a couple businesses from somebody with just great characteristics and just great character, and then we've bought something from somebody with an awful characteristics and awful character, and one was way
Night and day.
yeah, to say the least.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, let's jump in. Andrew, you kind of got the outline there.
Yeah. So if I'm kind of looking at this, thinking I've got an idea, I want to start a business, but I don't want to be working 15 to 24 hours a day, getting that thing off the ground. What's kind of your sales pitch for, you know, why buy a business instead of starting one? Other than the stuff that you just mentioned, if I'm thinking like all of the stuff that I have to do, you know, maybe my business was right here. How do I even get started? Like, what business? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, like, do you mean like as far as what type of business or?
Yeah. So like if I'm thinking I have an idea, let's just say I want to start a marketing company tomorrow, and that was my plan for 2024. I'm listening to this and I'm like, man, should I be looking for a marketing company or maybe something else?
Yeah, I think you have to consider if you're very passionate and love marketing and that's what you want to do, sure, like a great idea. But for people that, I think more people are going to come into it not knowing what kind of industry to go into, right? Because whatever they're doing in a W-2 job is probably not something relevant for them to go and purchase. So I'm thinking you got to think about what your interests are, what your skill set is, and kind of come up with something that would essentially fulfill you and in your purpose, but at the same time something that is profitable. For us, we're not fans of cleaning. We're not skilled in cleaning, but we love the model, especially the recurring revenue. So when I think it's important to do things for purpose, but at the same time, you have to balance that with what is reality and what actually makes sense as far as profitability goes.
Yeah, I think a huge level of self-awareness on top of everything that Jake said is how much time do I have to put into this?
Yeah, I mean, to me, buying a business simply because you're passionate about, you know, whatever that business is like buying a Craftsman home as a rental property because it's a Craftsman, you love Craftsman. It's like, well, that's kind of stupid.
Yeah, it's a good analogy.
You should be looking at the numbers, and if it's a, Rambler that looks ugly, but the margins are better than the beautiful Craftsman, who gives a shit? That's not what we're here to do. We're here to make money. So I mean, I'm new to this, obviously, but my answer to your question, Andrew, would be like, don't start with like, I mean, you want to analyze what your gifts are, what your skills are, but then open your eyes and think of all the different businesses that you can take and manage, and what that business is doing is less important than how that business can profit.
And if you love marketing, can you just bring that skill set to any other company?
Yeah, that's a great point.
I see. So finding something that may be adjacent, or in this case, if it's marketing, it doesn't really matter because everything needs marketing. Yeah. Finding something that will be profitable that you can put your passion into. Okay. %. So that leads kind of, you already touched on it. Who is the right person to buy a business?
I don't think everybody's meant to buy a business. I think that it takes obviously hard work and grit and all of that, but you have to have some people skills. I think that's first and number one, because the business acumen and the business skills can be learned. You can read books, you can get a mentor, etc. If you don't know how to treat people, and you don't know if people aren't going to look up to you and respect you, right? So it all comes back to how you carry yourself, how you talk to people, how you treat people. And I think you have to kind of wrap your head around that. And it's really self-awareness, right? If you know that like you don't do well receiving any type of criticism or feedback, or when people don't maybe do exactly what you want to say, like, because we're dealing with employees all the time and things don't always go smooth, and it would go a lot worse if we didn't have kind hearts and give grace when grace is needed. So I think just having self-awareness, if this is the correct path for you, and if it is, then I think going into the next step, it's really the type of business to choose. It really depends on what type of income you're trying to replace. If you're making $50,000, $60,000 a year, you could go buy something very quickly to replace your income. If you need to go make $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 a year to replace income, your search is going to be a little bit longer, right?
Yeah, I think that is completely spot on. So depending on do you want to buy something small and grow it on the side while you're having that sense of security by keeping your W-2 job, and then once my small business surpasses my day income, that's when I want to flip the switch and go all in. You could buy a very small company through that route for sure, but to not just beat a dead horse, it's just self-awareness, right? It's knowing how much time do you have to put into something. What is your skill set? What is your risk tolerance?
And you got to hustle. I mean, this is not easy. It's simple, but it's not easy.
You have to hustle, and you have to be able to get beat up day in and day out.
Right.
Again and again and again. There can be 2 weeks go by where it's like we haven't heard one good piece of news in 2 weeks. And we just expect it at this point.
Yeah, I think as long as you're expecting that going in, that's the big thing. Because if you're not expecting that and you're having a hard time, you're gonna be like, oh, why did I do this? But if you're expecting, like, there are going to be hard roads, but you just have to stick with it, because things have a weird way of working themselves out. They truly do.
Yeah, I mean, the people who, I've helped buy their first rental property and end up selling it in 2 years are the people who went in with rose-colored glasses, right? And they weren't expecting there to be turmoil. The people who hate the hike, the most, are the people who were expecting a little day hike, and it turns out you're going 5 miles up, steep uphill. Those are if you have the right expectations and you're willing to put in the work, you can learn to love the grind. But if you're going into it expecting this to be passive income, you're going to hate it.
Exactly. And I don't want to paint a picture where this is passive, where you're going to be putting 5 or 10 hours a week into it or anything like that, because I think when you build a business, you're probably putting in 12-hour days, 16-hour days for a couple years. When you buy a business, you're probably putting 12-hour days in for a couple months, and then once things are transferred and transitioned over, you really start to reap the benefits of the processes and the systems both the seller and you have put in place.
Got it. So step one is mental reflection, having serious conversations with yourself and possibly people who are close to you, learning about yourself and making sure you have the grit, you're willing to grind it out. Step two, education.
Yep. I would 100% education. And I feel like that's where the entrepreneurial fellowship comes into place. A community like this, people that are doing exactly what we're talking about, including the four of us on the podcast, and you're educating yourself, kind of what type of business to buy, where to find that business, what kind of due diligence to do, what does a transition process look like? There's so many intricacies inside of buying a business that of course you have to be educated, but take a step back, right? If you don't have any business experience, I think getting some general business experience or business knowledge by reading books, listening to podcasts, etc. And I don't think that you need to get all the knowledge in the world before you go and take action, because I think taking action is going to provide so much more knowledge than any type of reading you can do. I wouldn't mentally masturbate over business and business acquisitions before you start talking to sellers or start talking to SBA lenders, etc.
Well, I think that you end up getting quite the education just doing that, and maybe even more than just listening to podcasts and doing what. I don't know about you guys, but I'm like I have to be doing something to learn it. It's really hard for me to just watch a video and then really conceptualize, okay, great, it's done. I know how to do it. I need to be doing it. And I catch on pretty quickly after I'm able to do that. So yeah, even like you said, just getting in there, getting your feet wet, and kind of getting that education by learning by trial of fire. It's I mean, everyone here is entrepreneurs, and that's kind of the spirit that we have. And that trial by fire is kind of just comes with the gig, So that kind of feeds in perfectly to what I was going to say next. So I've been talking about this to family and friends, and honestly, just seeing if people know any businesses that are going to be coming up for sale, anything like that. And one of the biggest things I'm getting is well, what are you looking for? And I'm like, well, and I'll list off, blue collar stuff, a towing company, a HVAC company, electrical, plumbing. And they're like, what do you know about any of that stuff? How are you going to become the CEO of one of those companies when you don't know how to, you're not a plumber. What are you talking about? So what would you say to people who are listening to that? Okay, you're going to go buy a company and be the CEO of this business that you don't necessarily know from A to Z all about.
I think it's a great question, and I think it challenges us, right? So I have no idea how to clean, truly be a professional cleaner. I have no idea how to.
Gonna say poor Kendall.
Oh, I could wipe down the counters. Don't get me wrong. But you're not buying a plumbing company to be a plumber. And I think that's where the mindset shift has to change, right? So you're looking for opportunities that you're going to buy a plumbing company that has plumbers employed already. And ideally, in something like that, something more skilled, there is an operator in place, because you're going in there and you're pulling levers to grow the business. And you don't need to know what type of pipe or fitting or whatever it is that a plumber uses for this certain project. To think that you would need to do that would be pretty crazy, and then none of this would be possible, right? But people, you could go buy a tow truck company. You don't know how to drive a tow truck, right? Because you're not looking to go and buy a job. And that's the biggest thing. What do you think?
Yeah, spot on. And I think that in order for that to be true, the company you're purchasing should probably have more than a small handful of employees. If they've only got 2 employees, you all of a sudden might be in charge of hiring, and they're going to ask you technical questions about plumbing. So if you're buying a company in an industry you have 0 experience, buying something with a little more meat on the bone, a couple extra employees.
So if someone doesn't have the knowledge, you would probably say that there might be a revenue threshold that you would want to look above. Because just my personal thought, if someone's doing, $300,000 to $500,000 a year, it's probably the owner who's in the field doing all the work. So purchasing that business is probably not a good idea for you. But if you get kind of up above that $1 million range, that's probably going to have a place where you can step in as a CEO and you're not running everything.
Yep, I think that's very spot on. So threshold for revenue, for profitability, for employee headcount. There could be a certain level of sophistication there needs to be in management layers. You get to build your own buy box, but as far as going to something you don't have much experience, that would definitely lower the risk.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd say the profitability is probably the most important thing, because you want to make sure there's enough profit to afford an operator if there's not an operator in place already, right? So whether it's somebody that's going to get promoted with internally, or if that's somebody they're going to go out and hire.
And no one, or hopefully no one, we're not willy-nilly just running around buying companies, right? Our due diligence process, we know really, really well what we're getting ourselves into. So we know if there's going to be some unforeseen turmoils coming ahead. If we have value we can add, if it really makes sense to fit into our buy box or not.
And let me just give a quick example. So the HVAC company that we're in serious talks with, the owner has agreed essentially to stay on for 3 to 6 months to provide training. There's an employee that is there that has been there since the start, which was like 28 years ago, and he is willing to sign a 2-year contract to stay on. So you have to put some type of security blanket in place, or there has to be something in place, so you don't go in like, oh crap, we got to go install furnaces today. Like, that's not going to happen.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. I love that.
Yeah, I mean, I think of Brian Reynolds. He was on our podcast, and he's done really well building Anthem Coffee. He's just launched in Arizona, and Brian, in the podcast that we had with him, he said that he was not some coffee expert. He still isn't a coffee expert, but he knew how to create an experience, incredible customer service, how to market a company, and he knew the fundamentals of business and overcame the little aspect of, I'm not a coffee expert, right? And that might not be the same with every industry, but I feel like it's more important. I mean, if you have the skill set of being able to, market and create a culture that is phenomenal, and get the clients coming in, you can find the pieces to create the product, right? The product is frankly less important. I mean, I use the example of Starbucks all the time. I worked there for 5 years. They do not have the best coffee. That's a fact, right?
It depends on who you're asking. You absolutely.
Objectively, they do not have the best coffee, but they have the best marketing, right? You can get the same cup of coffee here or in China. Yeah.
We probably can we say that? No?
It's our podcast today, whatever we want.
Yeah, right.
Black Rifle Coffee, baby.
The product is, in my opinion, in many businesses, less important than the experience.
Yep, the experience and the service, right?
Absolutely.
Because, think of HVAC companies. The product itself, furnaces, air conditioners, it's all the same.
Yeah.
Pretty much. It's, do you feel safe with the people that are entering your house? Do you feel reassured that if something goes wrong, they're going to take care of it? Those are the things that truly matter.
Yeah.
And that's what you get at Starbucks. You get quick service. Your drink comes out quickly.
Tastes the same every time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, I have people hire me all the time, who clearly know I'm not like the smartest real estate person. Clearly, I'm not a builder. I don't know the ins and outs of every home. I don't know, all the ins and outs of investing, but they still use me because they trust me. They know I'm going to do the right thing, and they trust the experience I'm going to provide as their real estate broker. And the same type of thing. It's the product becomes less important when the service is phenomenal.
Nailed it.
No, that's good.
So if I'm sitting here kind of thinking, man, CEO, like that seems like a big term. I never really thought I was going to be in that position, but everything I've heard so far, it sounds really great. We've kind of talked a little bit about the type of people it's going to take to do this. Can the average person, no credentials, no business school, get this done?
Oh, yeah, 100%. I think you have to set yourself up for success and spend a couple months doing some knowledge-based searching, right? You're not just learning, you're searching for specific things, whether it's just a background in business, it's how to walk through contracts. You're going to get your foundational knowledge, and then you're going to hopefully, seek somebody out that's done it before, whether it's us or somebody else. It doesn't need to be us. There's lots of people that are doing this. This isn't a new concept by any means. And then once you have the knowledge, have the mentorship, I think you need to take action, and things are going to go wrong. Like, you're going to learn, you're going to go through conversations with sellers and like, man, crap, I shouldn't have asked that question. That rubbed in the wrong way. Or, dang, I didn't come into this Zoom interview with my camera on, and that rubbed the seller the wrong way because I didn't have my camera on, so they thought it was sketchy. That's actually happened to us. And just little things like that. And I think another thing to mention is you don't need to have a ton of money in the bank to do this. And I think that's the biggest pushback I feel like we get is, well, how are you buying, right? And I think that, we can go over it in this episode or another one, but leveraging yourself with private money is really the game changer.
Yep. I think the biggest things I get to is how do you afford to buy these businesses, and what makes you think that you're qualified to just go in and run all these businesses? It's so hard to do. And it's somewhat of a valid point, but I'm also not running around saying I'm going to go buy a bunch of tech companies and I'm going to create the next unicorn and I'm going to make $1 billion company. Like, there's businesses that have certain characteristics to them that I confidently believe I could go into and implement the same 6 strategies we've done on the businesses already in our portfolio, and we'll have very replicable results. And where we are right now, they just happen to be kind of home service based companies. So a roofing company, landscaping, gutter cleaning, pressure washing,
plumbing,
carpet
HVAC,
cleaning, window washing, any of those companies. Like, there's a lot of very core competencies that I could bring to the table, where if I'm not working in the day to day and I'm just working actually on the business with a very high level of confidence, I have a lot of value to bring to those companies.
A lot of the marketing is the same. A lot of the sales are the same. A lot of the hiring is the same.
Yeah. And a lot of those guys who start those companies, guys and gals who start those companies, they're in it. They don't have time to step back and be like, okay, how do we grow? What can I do to kind of move that needle in the business? Because they're in it. Like you said, if something goes wrong and someone doesn't show up, well, guess what they're doing? They're washing windows that day. So if you're purchasing a business where you can truly step back and be the person who's moving growth forward, that is so huge.
Yep.
It's massive, especially for these types of business.
A great point. And I think in particular in the home service sector here, most of these business owners started as a really, really good house cleaner, really, really good at landscaping. And they got really busy because their work was awesome. And they got so busy that they had to hire someone. And all of a sudden, fast forward 27 years, now they have a company of 18 employees or whatever it looks like. But at the end of the day, they are an operator. They're working in the business all the time, never on it. And they realize that, oh yeah, I still have a fax machine, and I still do emails, exactly. And I go and I pick up checks rather than having an online invoicing system. And so there's so many sellers that we've talked to, and it's like, man, we could just bring this to the 21st century. Probably in 48 hours, there's 6 different things. We could put a CRM in place, a better invoicing system. I can't even find them on Google.
Well, and to tie it into real estate again, because I do think a lot of our audience are people who've invested in real estate and now are looking to take the next step. The best landlords to buy a property from are the landlords who are circumstantial landlords, right? They bought a property that they lived in, and they moved out, and they were like, I guess I'm a landlord now. Yeah. And they have all these bad practices, right? They allow late payments. They don't vet their tenants properly, and subsequently they're like, well, this sucks. Like, I had a property, I had a product, but I didn't know anything about managing that product. And that's kind of what you're looking for, correct me if I'm wrong, is you're looking for people who are really good at landscaping, but not really good at managing a landscaping business. And those people just want to get out. And I found that so often with landlords who, they didn't go into this to be a landlord. They went into this like, I guess I'll rent this, and they're not good at it, right? And they're looking for a solution. You can provide that solution.
Yep. Same characteristics, or we're looking for characteristics within the business, the industry, and then we're looking with characteristics within the seller as well, right?
Absolutely.
They're burnt out. They've been doing it for a long time. They're lacking technology.
Yeah. So we started with mindset, education, mentorship. Now, I think we're going to get into financing in a different episode, but yes. I think next step is identifying what you're looking for. So we've already talked about don't have tunnel vision about like, I'm just looking for landscaping because I used to mow lawns, or I'm just looking for, HVAC, because I worked an HVAC job, you want to more so, correct me if I'm wrong, be looking at the numbers. I'm looking for a business that is bringing in X amount of profit and has X amount of overhead. Is that correct? And can you guys elaborate on that?
A couple of the biggest things is the size in the industry, right? I know that I never want to open, or I'm not, sorry, not open, but I never want to own a restaurant, right? Margins are so thin. The governor can shut it down with no questions asked, right? Can't do anything about it. So there's just certain industries I want to stay away from, and there's certain industries I want to be in. I want to be in blue collar. Like that is the biggest, blue collar and home service based businesses, which have a lot of crossover. I like that because I'm thinking recession resistant. Home service stuff is very recession resistant, especially if you're talking about things that break all the time. So I'd say look at industries you have some type of interest in, and then a model. Like, do you like recurring revenue? Of course you do. Everybody does, because it alleviates risk. So we're big fans of home service and recurring revenue, and then a price point. Do you want to have enough meat on the bone to bring in an operator right away? That would be really nice. Maybe there's already an operator in place that's not the owner. So you're looking probably a little bit higher of a purchase price because it will get a premium. It really just depends on kind of what speaks to you. And I think, let me ask you guys a question. If you were to buy a business, what industry would you want to be in? Because you're gonna have a gut reaction of something you're interested in or something you like.
Oh, it sounded like you were gonna keep going. No, Andrew, you start.
No, so it's easy. So we, when we first started talking with you guys like a month and a half ago, you said read the book Buy Then Build. And the whole first half is like evaluating yourself and then evaluating the spaces that you might want to look into entering. And I picked 3. It was blue collar because I ran a contracting company for 6-7 years. Agriculture and education. Just because I think that those are things that, 1, I'm interested in, and 2, they're not going anywhere. People are always going to go to school. People are always going to need food, and people are going to always need their stuff to be fixed when it's broken. So I think that, for me, those are the big 3.
Landscaping and roofing for me. I just, in my uneducated opinion, I feel like I can see a clear way to make those companies profitable. I can see how you can keep overhead fairly low, and if you specialize in those industries, you can, I don't know, based off my analysis, I think those would be easier ways to be successful.
And I think if people do some self-reflection, they will have certain industries that probably speak to them, or certain types of businesses that speak to them over others.
Yep, I would think so as well. And then determining, am I trying to replace my income? Do I just want to, would it just be awesome if I could make an extra $3,000 a month on the side? What your life circumstances are and what you're hoping to accomplish out of it would help you create the size of company you're looking to purchase, which would then the amount of effort you're going to put into it.
And then I'd use this example. Say you are, a middle-aged 30s or 40 years old, and you're married and you want to replace your wife's income so she can retire. Or stay at home, with kids and family. She makes $10,000 a month. Okay, you want to go purchase a business that makes at least roughly $120,000 a year profit with an operator in place, right? So that can replace. So look at what your life circumstances are and what you're trying to do, and then tailor your search based on that. If you would just want a side hustle that makes $3,000 to $5,000 a month to support lifestyle income, that's great. However, I will say there's higher risk to smaller purchases like that, right? The foundations usually aren't in place. It's very overwhelming. You're very much involved. So I think economies of scale come into place with a purchase. So I wouldn't go too small.
So just for anyone listening, you guys keep throwing around, like, if you want to put in a little bit of work, 5-10 hours a week, bring in like $3,000 a month. What is that going to cost you out of pocket? Because I'm sitting here thinking what that would be in real estate, indoors, right? So For that amount of money in doors, you'd have to have, it'd be,
Yeah, that's a lot of doors.
it's a lot of doors and I can't do the calculations or right off the cuff, but it's a lot of money. How much do you think you'd have to put down to purchase something that's making $3,000 to $4,000 in cash flow?
And before you answer the question, we don't have to go all into financing because I do think that's going to be
We're
the
gonna
next
do
part
that.
of this.
Yeah.
So just kind of a surface level of that.
Yeah. So you want to use a cleaning company as an example?
Yeah, actually, that's a good example.
Because I think-
let's drop a couple numbers on that.
So we purchased the business for, how much did we purchase it for? 200,000, and we put $35,000 down, and that cash flowed right away. It cash flowed like $6,500 a month. It's we've grown it, we've doubled it since then. But when we first bought it, it cash flowed $6,500 a month. So total ROI return like less than 6 months time, right? And we spend, when we first took over the business, we spent a good, not both of us, but probably a combined 30 to 40 hours a week for the first month. After that, I think we got it down to like 10. Now we're both spending like maybe an hour a day, maybe.
And that initial time we spent was training our replacement from day one.
Right.
Hired a virtual assistant, quickly identified that she can run this company about 90% of it. She can do the scheduling. Our virtual assistant out of the Philippines knows Pierce County better than I do, and it's not even close.
Yeah.
So for $35,000, you guys are making $6,500 in cash flow per month, and your investment was paid off in the first 6 months, and now it's just infinite cash on cash return.
Yeah. It wasn't our investment. We borrowed it from a private lender, and that got paid back.
So day one, the company was making $6,000, a little north of $6,000 a month. Our debt service was $2,250 a month. We knew that we had a huge spread where things could go way wrong, and we're still making money. So the risk was super low. Plus, again, there was no concentration. The business is somewhat recession proof, and all the clients are recurring.
And just for people doing quick math, that's almost $70,000 a year in profit, meaning that's a 200% cash on cash return.
If we don't grow it at all.
If you don't grow it at all. So I would challenge anybody to find a 200% cash on cash return in real estate.
100%. That's exactly why I asked the question, because I want people to, like, I've been talking a lot about this, and that's one of the things I've been using. It's like, listen, I know we've been talking about investing in real estate, but I would like to maybe start talking about something a little bit different, because I think the upside is freaking huge. Like, it's crazy when you start talking about numbers like that.
Yeah. And I think this is, and people will probably call me out on this, but maybe it's a bold take, but I feel like this is one of the last super untapped asset classes left in America, is the small businesses.
And I don't know if you guys know the stats right off the top of your head, but how many boomers are retiring in the United States every day?
8,000 or 10,000.
Yeah, it's like in between 8 and 10,000, and supposedly from surveys 14 to 17 own small businesses. So you have to think there's thousands and thousands and thousands of businesses that are becoming available every single month, and the opportunity's there, and it's only going to get bigger in the next 5 to 10 years because more and more people are retiring. I recently just listened to an episode on another podcast, Acquiring Minds. This guy bought a janitorial business, and he bought it for, I think, 1.8 million. It was doing about 600,000 in profit, and the owner wasn't even aware that she had a sellable asset. If her daughter wasn't a real estate agent that knew a business broker, she would have never. She was getting ready to retire, shut the doors. A lot of people don't, especially in their 60s and 70 years old, that have been doing this for a long time, don't know they have something to sell.
I've talked to multiple people in the last couple of weeks. They're like, well, yeah, my company's not worth anything. Like, when I'm done, it's done. I'm like, I don't know. You should really reconsider. We should chat about that. So I think that is the mindset of a lot of people who are closing up. They're like, well, I don't own any trucks. I don't have any, tools.
Yeah, they don't. Will is worth something.
The relationships and the goodwill of the name is worth something.
Yeah, you do $900,000 a year in revenue. Like, how is that not worth anything? And I think that's what a lot of people think.
So to wrap up this podcast, I think
I have one more question. So
Oh no, that's great. I think the last transition I want to make is leaving everybody with, like we've talked about mindset, education, mentorship, and now we're talking about analyzing what you want to target. So maybe we've analyzed now, or the listener has done those 4 steps. So how do we start looking? Like, where do we start looking? How do we start analyzing potential opportunities so that we can leave people with like a tangible thing? Go start with this, right? Go start by this is why I tell people who are saying they want to get into real estate investing, go analyze 5 properties right now. So how can people start doing that? Where do they find opportunities, or where did you guys start?
Yeah, so this is a great question, and this will be a whole nother episode, right, that we're going to go really deep in. I would say first start going to BizBuySell, LoopNet, all of the websites where you can look for things that are for sale, right? And you'll get numbers on there, and you'll know if they make sense or not after you do some education. That would be my very first step. And then once you've done that, I would say you're probably not going to visit those websites very much more after we go through our next episode, because we're creating more of a proprietary, I say that right?
proprietary, yeah.
Way of finding businesses, and that's not special to us. It's special to everybody that kind of does this. It's pulling lists of all of the businesses based on criteria in the area that you want to buy in, and then very similar to real estate, a little cold outreach, a little email, a little in-person visit, postcards, phone calls.
It's pretty easy. Like, when you think about it, you go to a lot of businesses every day. Like, I got in a car accident a couple of weeks ago, and I asked the tow truck driver, like, hey, you know the owner? Like, yeah, I do. Ever think about selling? And it's like, maybe. Actually, that's a really good question. I went to get my oil changed, and I asked the guy who's behind the counter. I was like, hey, do you know the owner? He's like, I'm the owner. I was like, hey, man, like, you think about ever selling this place? And he was like, actually, yeah, I'm getting old. So like, just all the people that you come in contact with every single day, it could be an opportunity to just ask a quick question.
100%.
What are they going to say? Like, why are you asking me? Like, if they probably don't get called all the time. They probably don't get asked that all the time.
It's flattering, honestly.
Exactly.
Who doesn't want to hear about a potential big payday?
Yeah.
Hear you out.
Exactly. And I think that if you think real estate is based on relationships, this is a whole new level, because you're thinking of somebody that's been pouring their blood, sweat, and tears and money into a business for the last 20 or 30 years. They want to make sure that they're handing their baby off to somebody that's going to respect it and keep it around. So there's a relationship element that is there that is not there in real estate to that level.
So the moral of the story is go get an fender bender and then talk to the tow truck driver. Right, Andrew? Hey, that's a really good success story.
I don't
there.
know if it's a profitable endeavor yet or great for the body, but we'll keep that. We'll keep you guys updated.
Oh my gosh. Well, do you want to ask your last question?
Yeah. So I have one more
recap?
question. So a lot of the questions I'm asking today was just to kind of get people excited about the potential of buying businesses, the potential for cash flow and things that maybe you didn't see. Just the whole idea of being a CEO and buying a company. Well, there's a whole lot behind that is very profitable and potentially very rewarding. The final question I was going to ask is, say you don't want to be heavily vested, you don't want to be a CEO, you don't really want to do any of this, but you're maybe hearing some of these numbers and you're like, I got some money that I would like to throw into a business. Is there opportunity for that for the person who doesn't want to be a CEO? They just got the cash?
Yeah. I mean, of course, I think just like in real estate, you have to think, when you buy a lot of real estate, you're usually using other people's money one way or another, right? So I think that the very same strategy can be used to carried over to business. You can, whether it's for just a nice percentage of a return, or if it's for equity in a return of profit share, there's so many different ways you can structure it. So 100%.
And generally those returns are going to beat real estate all day.
Screw up.
Even if you screw up.
Yeah, they really should. I'm going to take this completely out of left field right now, go a completely different direction because I'm compelled to do so. When the average person, including myself in the past, thought of, I'm tired of working for the man, I want to do something for myself, the first thing instinctually that I think comes to you is I should start a business. What can I invent? What can I do different? And in that scenario, your way of looking for proof of concept would really be going out and asking your friends, hey, if I started a cleaning company and I charged $10 less than your cleaner, would you buy from me? Most of them are say, yeah, sure. You're my buddy. Why not? Fast forward to you going and doing that. And now you ask the same friends that same thing. It's like, you know what? Actually, I've had that cleaner for 13 years and she always shows up on time. And I know she's not going to steal my stuff. And
She's got a family.
yeah. I don't think I'm actually going to switch to her for a $10 savings. That's not really worth it to me. And you're going to bring in some brand new girl that I've never met before. And then some people give you the chance and the cleaner I just hired doesn't show up and she doesn't respond. And I only have one cleaner and she's busy for the next 4 days. So now it's next week before she can come back. And so there's cost in a way of money and cost in a way of time. Actually, a great example would be if I can save you 20% on your toilet paper and all the stuff that you buy all the time, would you buy that? Would you want that deal?
Yes.
Okay. You just need to go to Amway.com.
Yeah, I knew you were going to say that.
Oh, that's way too big of a pain in the ass to save 20%. That goes completely against my subconscious thoughts of how I go and get stuff right now. So the ease of getting the service, there's so many moving parts where you buy a business that's already been around for more than 5 years. All of these proofs of concept are actually just facts at this point. And then you can look at all the stats. There's a 2% fail rate or default rate on the SBA loans. Like if you do really good underwriting and come into the purchase with eyes wide open, the odds of failing are low. And as we get further into these episodes, we're going to go to how we structure our debt, and you're going to see how the odds of going upside down are even smaller.
And to circle this back to the lending question is, that's the type of business you want to lend to, something that's been in business for 5 or 10 years. Like if you're somebody that just has capital and you want to put 50, 100, 250, 500,000 into a business, partner with somebody that's going to run it, you have to be very, very specific with your due diligence. And one of the things that you have to check off is something that's been in business for, if I'm going to lend money on it, it's going to be in business for 10, 20 years at least, right? Because
Yeah, good point.
I need that.
That's security.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and again, bringing it back to real estate, when you go, if you're a landlord who has a portfolio and you go to a bank and you're showing them your portfolio, you're much more likely to get a loan than me saying, hey, I want to be a landlord. Can you give me a loan? They're like, yeah, it's going to be 25, 30% down and, a higher interest rate and all that. So, I mean, it all ties in. So to summarize, and I'll let everybody kind of elaborate if they want to and just conclude with final thoughts. I want to end these things with actionable items. So just to repeat, step 1 is self-reflection, right? Looking into yourself and seeing if this really is the right path. Step 2 is education. Start by joining the Entrepreneur Fellowship. It's a free Facebook group. So join the fellowship and read books like Buy Then Build. Step 3 is start identifying strengths and weaknesses, what are businesses that you'd be targeting. And then step 4 is start analyzing analyzing businesses like you do properties and refining that skill set. So when you're really ready to start looking off market, you're not learning from scratch at that point. You've already done a lot of the research and education.
Exactly.
Very well said. Get off the couch, take action.
Love it. Anything you guys want to add before we wrap things up?
Yeah, one thing, we are going to be doing these probably once a month. So our goal is to bring you 3 guests and then have 1 educational podcast a month. And we're going to do that every single month for the rest of the year. So yeah, stay tuned for, like Jake said, we'll have 2, 3, 4, probably through 12. So
Awesome.
Kyle, Jake, anything else before we wrap things up?
No, I think that's good. Excited for the next one.
Likewise.
Love it,
Let's
guys.
go.
Well, again, find us on the Entrepreneur Fellowship. We're on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, all around. So find us there. And Andrew, you want to wrap things up for us?
Yeah, man. I mean, if you like what you hear, check us out on all of the major podcast platforms. Like, subscribe, hit that notification button, and check out the YouTube. And join the Entrepreneur Fellowship on Facebook. See y'all next time.